Hello folks, and welcome again to another screencast. This time it's a very short screencast, but we are going to be discussing what we call cue utilization, which is part of yet another theory within sports psychology. Essentially how this works, cue utilization, is using the inverted U theory. So if you remember, we recently touched upon the drive theory through Zajonk's model, and this theory, cue utilization, is about selective attention and its relationship with the inverted U. Now, just to recap on the inverted U, I imagine nobody needs any recap, but just very briefly, obviously the further we are aroused shows a decrease or an increase in performance, and in this case, if our arousal is particularly low, then our performance is low. If we gain what we call to an optimal point in our arousal levels, our performance will be at its peak, and if we are over aroused, our performance will revert back to being low again, or it will decrease. Now, in terms of selective attention, what this implies is that whether you are low aroused, optimally aroused, or over aroused will determine how selective your perceptual narrowing is in relation to acquiring or using skills within games or isolated situations. For example, if your arousal level is low and you are in a game situation, it could be netball or basketball or football, one of those games where there are lots of multiple choices to be made and there's lots of decisions to be made. If your arousal levels are low, what cue utilization theory suggests is that you have too many stimuli to focus on, and what that's called is your perceptual field. And what it means is your perceptual field is too wide, there's too much to think about. So let's say we were playing hockey, we're dribbling a ball in hockey, we've got to think about the stick, we've got to think about the ball, we've got to think about our opponents, we've got to think about our own players, we've got to think about the crowd environment, we've got to think about the referee, the pitch, the temperature, the wind, etc, etc. Now, if my arousal level is very low, I will be thinking about all of those factors and not focusing in enough on what I need to be thinking about, which may be the dribbling action itself, or coming up to an opponent, or to make a decision. So when arousal is low, performance will also be low, but also our perceptual field in terms of selective attention and cue utilization is low. If, on the other hand, our arousal levels are too high, it's the reverse. We focus in on one or two stimuli, or things that interest us, rather than many things that could interest us, which was when our optimal arousal levels are low. And when we focus in too few stimuli, we say then the perceptual field is too narrow. And a good example of this is, let's say we're in boxing and somebody's clobbering me around the head quite a few times, and I'm losing the fight, and I might get angry, my arousal levels will go up and peak, and I'll get extremely angry, and essentially what I'll do is I'll start swinging at my opponent because I'm angry at them and I just want to hit the opponent. So my stimuli itself is just to hit my opponent as hard as I possibly can, and my perceptual field has gone from being very wide to extremely narrow, just focused on doing this one thing. And what happens there is, because I'm only focusing on one stimuli, I forget about the other relevant cues, which might be to guard my head, it might be to dodge punches, it might be to pick certain shots and use actual boxing technique rather than just hitting the guy, and my opponent will therefore be able to pick me off very quickly because I'm just swinging and throwing, not worrying about defence or anything else. So they're the two extremes of this inverted U with cue utilization. Now what it suggests is when you are optimally aroused, so in that that centre third, it creates a perceptual field that shows optimal width. So we're not thinking about too few things, we're not thinking about too many things, we're thinking about the correct things. And what that's called is selective attention. So we're thinking about exactly what is correct at that moment in time for that particular skill to be delivered, rehearsed, utilised, whatever you want to call it. So again, going back to our sporting examples, if we were playing basketball, it could be that I'm dribbling in basketball, and if I'm in an optimal arousal zone, I will make a correct decision as I near the basket. If a defender comes to me, I'll make the correct decision as to when that defender is going to move towards me. So I'm focusing in on the defender, I'm focusing in on my technique, and I'm focusing in on my teammates. I've removed the idea of the crowd, I've partially removed the idea of the referee unless he blows against me, and I've also partially removed some of the other opponents. So I'm just focusing on the three things that I want to do in that peak or optimal arousal zone, and therefore my perceptual field is at optimal width and my performance will improve. Okay, feel free to go over this cue utilisation theory again and again and again, make notes, bring it to the lesson, and we will push this a little bit further.